I'd like to introduce our moderator, and then our moderator will introduce the panel to everybody. For this session, our moderator is Allie Wing. Allie is the former Chief Marketing Officer and EVP of Digital Channels for Ascena Retail Group. During her time at Ascena, Allie launched Ascena's first ever enterprise-wide e-commerce platform, responsive mobile, multi-tender loyalty, and customer data recovery platform. Prior to joining Ascena, Allie was founder, CEO, and board member of a private equity-backed Giggle, an industry-leading omni-channel retailer, wholesaler, and licensor of juvenile products. Allie started her career at Nike, serving in a variety of marketing and corporate development roles, and Allie now serves on the boards of Bazaar Voice and Worldwide Orphans. I'll turn it over to you, Allie.
We're looking forward to the panel today. We hope to keep it really conversational and you guys as much the drivers as possible to make it relevant, because I probably don't have to tell any of you, we could put a big title like Big Data and Artificial Intelligence and be really esoteric in the next 45 minutes. But since we have three really great experts from three very different industries, what we're going to try to do is let them be a little bit of a case study in some of the practical applications of the big themes that we're hearing about in big data today. At the end, we will take questions. We would love questions. And we would happily do it throughout, but there's really no way to do that. So kind of with about 10 minutes left, I'll give you an option if anybody wants to store up questions and come to the microphone. Otherwise, we look forward to just making this interactive. I am not actually going to do LinkedIn type bios because we're all on LinkedIn and you're all data savvy and you all know how to go find out about our backgrounds. What I am going to do is I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give a very short corporate bio of who they're working for, what are they currently working on as top priorities, and sort of what's their title and role and responsibility in that. Okay, so to give you the kind of the context for the topics we're going to cover today. So I'm going to start with Eric and let him take it away.
Thank you, Allie. I work at Ascena Retail. Currently, I report to the CFO for the value segment, which includes Maurice's and Dress Barn. I lead the customer analytics, customer insights, and also oversee our CRM, customer experience management platforms. Our current priorities are customer attribution is probably the thing they're working hardest on at the moment to drive short-term immediate value, and then longer-term we're re-platforming our CRM and CEM infrastructure.
And I'm going to chime in since we've worked together a lot. For any of you that don't know, that's covering retail at scale at about 2,000 doors, about a little over $2 billion, and really rapidly growing digital platforms within that. And just to give you a scope and scale, Ascena is about an $8 billion retail all specialty apparel. He covers a segment that's about a third of that.
Hi, I'm Joyce. I work at Travelers Insurance. For those of you that aren't familiar, we write home, auto, and property, commercial insurance, also for businesses. I am in charge of our loss analytics division, which looks at estimating the losses for insurance, so car accidents, your house burning down, things like that, what the ultimate payment will be. And within that, I would say some of our top priorities are, first one I would say is the use of artificial intelligence. And second, I would add that the use of image analytics, whether it's images derived from drones, images that you sent in of your claim, things like that. And I would say the third focus is really just focused on predicting our loss trends as we look forward to next year, our current state, where we are for automobile prices, gas prices, other things related to insurance.
Right, I'm Mohammed Aaser. I lead marketing analytics for Ameriprise. And just for those who may not be as familiar with Ameriprise, we are a financial services company. We have over 10,000 financial advisors who help more than 2 million clients with setting their financial goals and helping them prepare for retirement. In addition to that, our company also owns an asset manager, an insurance company, a life insurance company, and a property and casualty insurance company as well. My role primarily is in the marketing analytics side, so some of the key priorities of my group are focusing on client deepening and client experience, so enabling our advisors to get insights on all the things our clients are doing with us so they can better manage their relationships with them. In addition to that, client acquisition, how to continue to aid advisors in driving client growth. And then finally, client retention, ensuring that they're having a great experience so they stay with us.
Great, you guys, thank you. So we're gonna kick things off with kind of we're getting mic instructions. We're gonna kick things off with sort of just an overarching question that any of you guys can take, and it's really to kind of set the stage, and we're gonna start talking about some of the current themes that I know you're all super familiar with in big data. But that first question really is, there's been so much hype about big data for at least a decade, certainly with a lot of momentum in the last few years. And you guys really all have roles in fairly, what we would consider pretty traditional companies. I'd love to hear from you your top 1, 2, or 3 things that you see big data is really impacting in your industry, both as still an opportunity set you're trying to harness or you've already seen start to change it. Any one of you can take it to start. Mohammed, why don't you start?
All right, I guess I'll get started. You know, we have, as I mentioned, we have 10,000 financial advisors. And as I think about data and analytics, I think about how can we empower such a large number of people just to make better decisions to use their time. So I always think about the fact that we have these advisors. I say, how do we do advisors squared? How do we basically multiply their productivity? How do we multiply their performance? And so I think the key thing here then is, you know, obviously you get all the insights, but how do you make it really easy for advisors to adopt these analytics tools to improve their performance? And quite frankly, it's a tough challenge. The biggest challenge, in fact, is getting the advisors to buy in to the analytics tools that we've created. And so we are now spending a lot of time, you know, doing UX, UI type of experience, doing, you know, field engagement with a lot of advisors to test and build out our analytics capabilities so that advisors use them to enhance their performance.
That's great.
I would say from an insurance perspective, when we look at big data, we're focused on how we can use that to refine our rating plans further. So when you call and get your auto insurance quote, before we probably based it on your gender, where you live, what type of vehicle you have, things like that. And now we're pulling in big data to learn more about our customers and refine how we rate each person more individually. And then I would say on the back end is taking a look at our unstructured data to look at what we estimate our losses to be. So for example, we have a chronic pain model where we look with using the use of big data, we estimate and predict whether we think you're likely to suffer from chronic pain because of your injuries, and we put you on a different path based on that information with more aggressive care to avoid chronic pain, unnecessary surgeries, and opioid addiction.
In specialty retail, probably the biggest thing going, there's 2 places I think about it. First, at Ascena. So first, recognize we're Maurice's, Dress Barn, Ann Taylor, Loft, Lane Bryant, Catherine's, and Justice. We have multiple disparate sources of data. How do we migrate from an organization that has been primarily brick and mortar to an omni-channel environment? And for that omni-channel environment to succeed, we need a strong, solid data layer from which we can build up and start leveraging the artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning capabilities that are out there. So we're right now consolidating a lot of our data into a single usable platform. On the more immediate front, as I mentioned earlier, contacting customers and prospects through the internet, whether it be through display, affiliates, email, pulling all that click, impression data, that's a big data source for us. How do we store that, collect it, and access it quickly so that we can make decisions based on yesterday's data to start looking at how do we start changing our digital ad spend or moving it around?
You know, there's as much conversation in big data about tool sets as there is speed and agility. And we all know that, you know, they're kind of three parts of the whole, right? You got to have all of them working for you. Before we kind of dig into some of the complexities around speed and agility, are there any in your respective industries, are there any sort of big tool call-outs that you think are really required tools today, or tools that you think, as you're thinking about who this audience is, should be on their radar, that you think are really bringing to bear some of the power of big data that we've all been hearing about for a long time and know practically we're all still pretty busy trying to harness?
I'll start. I'll be honest, we're beginning that journey, so we're doing a lot of tool selection today. And a lot of that is figuring out how to leverage Hadoop-type environments, but also tool sets that sit on top of that to manage that information in a more automated, less person-involved, less resource-demanding way, so that we're not writing code to move this data here. How do we take advantage of more of the higher-level ETL tools to load that, and then create that common infrastructure, and we can go from there. That's probably the biggest thing we're looking at right now. Then after that, what analysis tools and stuff we put on there are relatively plug and play. It's good data will give us good analysis, is where our focus is today.
I agree with that. We've looked at a variety of tools, and I think the answer typically is, what is the user, the analyst, comfortable with, and which one is the best to solve your particular problem, not so much that there's one best software, one best tool to use. It's more, what do you have in your toolkit, and which one is the best for your knowledge base, and then also for to solve that particular problem.
Yeah, and kind of building on that one, I sort of see four categories of different tools out there. I see your data science toolkit. I see your visualization. I see storage, and then I also see sort of point text solutions. And on the data science side, I think there's a lot of enhancements going on. There's a ton. It's the wild, wild west today. I mean, there's so many companies, so many startups doing stuff in the data science space. My personal view has been, don't commit to anything. Try stuff that works for your team, and being sort of an agile. Be agile about it, because in a few years we'll see what actually sticks. I think the other piece is on the data science side, I'm seeing a growth of automation tools. So as we know, data science talent is limited, but you're seeing the growth of sort of automated modeling tools, which help save a bunch of time for data scientists and can multiply their productivity. So I think there's something there as well. And then, on the other areas like storage, I'm not quite the expert there. I think things have improved. There are also point text solutions, which I think are really interesting. Point text solutions are basically end-to-end technology solutions that focus on a particular product. And you may meet some people today, right? They do things they're focused on marketing mix modeling, and they're really good at it, and they've built everything out from the data acquisition all the way to the user reports. I do think that companies should be thinking about where you use point text solutions versus building your entire analytics workflows, your models, all that, because it just increases your ability to capture impact quickly.
Mohammed, just start with you really quickly on this, because it's a question that when you go out and you read any of the panels on big data, it's a commonly asked one. What role are legacy systems in your environment playing in this equation for you, and how are you tackling sort of the complexities associated with migrating a very mature company?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably a challenge for a lot of companies. It certainly is a challenge and an opportunity for us. I think the good news for us is that we have had historically done a good job of capturing our client data and our advisor data for a long time, actually in a centralized place. And so we're able to access that. We do have some limitations to that. Our data is not updated daily. It's updated monthly, for example, right? There's some data sources that aren't there today. And so we are now on a journey, actually, to a lot of companies have been building big, data storage solutions for the last couple of years, invested a lot. We're lucky now to learn from their experience, and we found some cloud-based solutions for us, like Amazon and Redshift and all these, that we're now building plans to migrate our data into these types of environments. So, ultimately, we're keeping our sort of quote-unquote legacy systems in place, and we're able to work with it, and we're just sort of building out sort of our next level as we speak.
I would agree with Mohammed. That's how we're definitely viewing it, that you're keeping your legacy systems, which in many cases for us with our regulation is financially balanced, and then really playing with that unstructured world, building out our big data capabilities, and then using that as more of an exploratory area. And then, if it's something that we really want, we can move it to the structured environment and have it all perfectly balanced. But if we don't need that, then we don't do that. So I think of it as not a replacement, but as an add-on.
I'm going to throw in before Eric answers, just because I want you to put a little nuance to this, having spent a lot of time in retail together. This sounds like integration management nightmare to me. Talk to that when you talk about managing through these systems evolutions.
Yeah, I was going to add that I wish my legacy systems weren't changing. Because we're in addition to building new intelligence platforms on top of them, we're changing our warehouse systems. We're changing our POS system. We're changing our credit card systems. So the challenges are real. I wish I had a great answer. I think the best thing that we're doing and starting to evolve to is learning from our mistakes. And that is, honestly, the biggest one we've had at the moment is how do you get IT sourcing, IT architecture, business users, and the strategists, kind of the operators and the strategists on the business side, along with IT into the conversation, so it's not 100% IT driven. And I love all my IT brethren. I'm trying to be inclusive. I am not trying to be exclusive here. And I think that's the biggest learn. I think the other thing that I wanted to build on something that Mohammed said is also switching from a waterfall to an agile methodology where we don't have to get it right the first time, right? And so how do we start putting out small wins and evolving from that? That means we're going to make mistakes, and how do you build that allowance into the business and the business operating to say, hey, the website may not do checkout perfectly well, but it's good enough to launch because I'm not going to lose that much, and have a margin, understand the impact and when I'll get back to there.
Well, speaking of quality of data and the risk or the appetite for errors, as we know that it's a varying degree depending on different functions within different companies, for that sort of risk appetite. One of the things we're hearing a lot about is everyone's talking about cloud-based data lakes or data discovery platforms, or you name it. I also hear a lot about data toxic swamps and some of the challenges around governance and data integrity in those environments. And I wonder if each of you guys could share, what do you think is the primary driver to that concern? Why are we struggling with some of that? Is that a legitimate concern? Or is that the nature of us starting to move faster and have greater agility with data?
I'll start.
Okay.
The problem is becoming bigger and more real for Ascena from the point of view as more data lakes evolve. So the first one, there wasn't an issue because it was the single source, right? And now I have another one with a slightly different definition and a slightly different definition over here. And so we, quite honestly, are just starting to grapple with that right now. We are investigating software where that management layer of that metadata can sit across those and build governance models, because honestly, we don't have any master data management governance processes in place. And as we're getting bigger and leveraging the data more, we're understanding that product attributes might be important to have across multiple systems and consistencies, and have a consistent architecture so that different systems can access it and not stand on the shoulders of heroes who've managed it in the past. So.
I do agree that, I guess I haven't called it toxic, but I think as you think about it, the variety of the data sources, the data lakes, and the unstructured data is that it's going to come up with different answers, and you have to understand why and what the source is, and also, do you just need to test and learn, and is that good enough, or does it have to be perfectly balanced to the penny? And I think depending on the situation and the analysis, there's a different answer depending on what you need.
Yeah, maybe there's just two things I'd add there. I think the governance issue, the quality, I think matters. I think part of it is if you can build a proof of concept quickly, and then see if there's value there, and then go and scrutinize it with a bunch of business partners to really pressure test it, that you find a lot of holes. That's when you find the holes, and that's where you can go back and make those improvements. I think the second thing too around data, just the data lake, one of the things we're thinking about at Ameriprise is actually creating in some companies have done this, but for your key data sources or your key data lakes, actually creating sort of owners for those data lakes. So for example, our Client 360, creating a role to manage all the data elements that are inputted into that client data lake, and then managing, ensuring the quality is there, and then being sort of that pivot point for the rest of the organization if anybody actually needs it, provisioning access, all that type of stuff. So trying to build an organization actually around our data in a way that we haven't had in the past.
I did want to add, Ali mentioned something in passing at the beginning that I don't want to get lost in this conversation. It is, depending on the functional area you're working on, there's a different standard for data quality. Yeah. So inside, so I live inside I currently report to the CFO. That's because our CMO position is open at the moment, Ali. But marketing information doesn't have to have the same precision that the general ledger has to have, okay? And then further, let's also admit that web data is never going to be clean, okay? So you don't need as much precision there as much as you need to be able to depend on trends and know that the relative nature of there is solid enough to make a decision, so.
I agree with that. When I think about our regulatory financial data, it has to be balanced. But when we think about telematics data, for instance, think about as you drive, the thousands of data points we have on your speed, where you're going, direction, how fast, hard stops. That's just never going to balance. And you have to work with that to understand trends and driving behavior.
Well, quality of data or the governance around your data leads to kind of two big topics all the time, right? One is it's a trade-off of agility, right, and speed. And the other is trust or persuasion. So let's try to tackle both those just a little bit because they're big executive problems around big data today. And let's start with trust. There's great storylines today about big data is only as good as the big storytelling about big data, right? You have to be good at selling the data and the data results. As executives in each of your organization, what have you learned as key tricks and tips? Maybe one of them is what you've all alluded to, which is it's a different tactic with different parts of the organization. But what are some of the key things about being good at telling your data story with the goal that we're really only all doing this to have it affect business decisions? And if it's not affecting business decisions, it's not producing results. You want to start with this, Julie?
I'll start. I think a lot of it is, you're right, telling the story and making it to leaders that aren't at all technical, a believable story, and understanding what this analysis did and what decisions we should do differently because of it, and being able to sell it without talking too much, I think, about the technical, unless they want to delve into it. So having that right balance of explaining it to non-technical audience to sell the idea and the concept and what you want to do, it can be hard and it can be really good. I would say at Travelers, we're lucky that it's a very analytics-driven company, and so they'll just kind of, my non-technical people will be like, can you just Hadoop the big data and get us an answer? And you're like, sure, we can definitely do that. So I think I'm in a nice spot where the luxury of they believe the analysis, and it's more just understanding why, if a driver is unexpected, why is that you're finding that's contrary to what is common belief? I think that's the opportunity where you really have to sell why what you found was contrary to what most people held true.
Mohammed, do you feel like you've got an easy audience?
Well, I think I certainly think that's probably one of the most important parts, right? Is how do you build the trust and how do you persuade others, right? How do you be a change maker? And the interesting thing about analytics often is you're probably going to present something that someone in the organization doesn't like. You may show a problem in the way you run operations. You may show a problem in the way an advisor works with their client. You may show a problem in the way we do our marketing, the way we spend our marketing dollars. And so a lot of it honestly comes down to how you work with different leaders within the organization to buy in and to have support and to make the organizational, sometimes the challenging organizational decisions. And so I think, some of just the basics of change management where it become really important, having good sponsorship, ensuring that people, before you present your findings, your peers and other folks who are going to be impacted are sort of aware, working with them to think about what they can do, given those findings. I mean, I think all those things that I think what consultants have to do to drive change in organizations is really important in ensuring that the data is actually used.
I'm going to set it for Eric and say that certainly within retail, while there's a lot of people I would say that it's very analytic and there's lots of data used, there is a sea change of retailers being built largely on a product data set, now needing to understand a customer data set and to look at those with a different sense of priorities and therefore bias towards existing systems. So there is very, very complex audience management. Wouldn't you say, Eric? I can't say for finance. I can say that in retail it's a huge complexity.
100%. Honestly, this past week I had a breakthrough that I'm excited about, that my CEO is actively requesting a report of new customers, reactivated customers, and retained customers week over week, month to date, quarter to date, year to date, where this is a sea change from when it used to just be about product. Now, let me be clear. I have to couch product against that, and I have to count the gross margin and the discount rate against that so that he understands what's going on. Because the primary driver there was honestly a very strategic question. So we weren't getting into the sausage making, but something I want to point out was in a chair as an analytics lead or coaching is, how do I get what does he care about or she care about that makes her job easier? So they don't care about my sausage making and all the wonderful infrastructure and tools and hardworking people behind it. They don't know, how am I going to affect the bottom line? So the discussion here, why my CEO is asking about that is, how do I drive marketing spend for customer acquisition without knowing that I'm driving gross margin and discount rates down across the entire base? So now he can tell with these reporting and force it down is, look, I'm willing to give away this margin and discount for new customers, but not for retained and some for reactivated, but certainly not for retained.
I would say a lot of what we've heard of themes across industries is the key is being able to translate to the different audiences, because the challenge of the power of data is you've got to learn to speak in everybody else's language, so you got to bring it to them. And that translation has got a whole bunch of different complexities based on different technologies, different data sets, and different industries for sure. I'm going to segue to one question before we kind of talk about the future and what's exciting for each of these guys. They each have a bunch of really exciting projects that I want them to get a chance to share with you. And just more broadly than just talent, which we all know is a pain point, walk us through what are the biggest pain points that you're confronted with today? From one end of the spectrum of champions or budgets to the true technology limitations. Where are you on that spectrum, and what would you say are the ones that you're trying to actually sort of solve in order to achieve the big project priorities that you outlined at the beginning? Mohammed, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I think that's the talent needs, right?
You can include talent in it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there are talent needs across the board. I think, you need sort of the analytics talent and the data engineering talent. You need sort of the technology talent, and then you need the business translation and change talent. And I think, honestly, most companies, if you ask them, they'll say they need resources in all three areas. A couple of things that I thought about in trying to augment that talent on the translator side, the folks that are actually driving the change in the organization, can you actually host boot camps within the organization to train folks who may not be as sophisticated in analytics to understand the power of it and sort of lead the charge and create pull for analytics. So that's one way to initiate it on that side. On the data science side, there are new tools coming out now that automate a lot of some of the data science techniques, where basically you're able to take a data scientist and drive 3x, 5x productivity by giving them the right tools, some of these automated tools. And so I think that's another way to build capability, relatively quickly. I think on the technology side, I have to say that's one of the areas I'm probably less versed in, but I do think, at least in the organizations that I've worked in, that the whole cloud environment, being able to build that up, scale it up, all the rest seems to continue to be a need. And I'm not sure if there's an automated way or an easy way to do that beyond bringing that talent in and helping them build those environments.
Go for it.
Yeah, I would add to that. I agree. Talent is very hard to hire, find, retain. I also think for us, it's the matter of prioritization. Are we focused on the product? Are we focused on the customer? Are we focused on losses? What are we focused on? And so for us, it's been, we want to focus on everything, our digital experience and, the agent experience and everything else in between. So for us, I always think of it as we have way more ideas than we have time or money. So really trying to determine the ones that will have the greatest benefit to our organization is our biggest struggle.
Yeah. Great points. I don't have a ton to add. I think the pace of change is what's driving a lot of what's going on here. Is just all the priorities and all the talent keeping up with the technology and tools and processes evolving. And we're taking steps on greater communication and education, but it's just moving fast. The other thing that I think I pointed out earlier is how all these interconnected changes are impacting across each other. So if I push here, I have to be aware of what's happening otherwise. And we're just starting to realize that, but and addressing that.
One of the things, as I talk to each of you, and I'm going to call it out for the audience, that is probably you all being humble, because I think it's the hard role of being in one of the roles that's considered in data, is you're being challenged to be a recipient that then sorts and filters a wide range of requests, because there are data architecture questions, there are data engineering questions, different than data analyst questions, and certainly very different than IT implementation questions. And they're all related, but they're not necessarily the same skill set to get at all of them, and you guys are being sort of quarterbacking in a lot of those, which I think is a complexity that we see across a lot of the organizations. So let's move into, before we open it up for any questions, if people want to get a chance to take advantage of the experts, let's move into just quick teasers on what's novel and new. You each have a couple that are hot, and I feel like it would be remiss to be on a big data panel and not talk about a couple of the hot sizzle things that are coming down the pike. And specifically what I'd love to have you do, and it's as we talked about before, is talk about how your industry is realizing a couple of these, whether it's AI, whether it's deep learning, you name it. And Julie, you want to start on this one?
Sure. So I think there's a couple things as an industry beyond just travelers that we're focused on. One is artificial intelligence, how we can use that to speed up business processes, streamline certain processes, things like that. The second thing I would comment on is that we're very interested today in image analytics. Some insurance companies, if you get in an auto accident, you can snap a picture of it, or if your fence blew away, you can snap a picture of the broken pieces, and they will settle your claim based on that image that you sent. So how do you detect what that looks like, what we should pay, the fraud, things like that. We're very interested in building models around that and determining the payout, and then also detecting fraud. The other thing we're interested in is predicting our claimants' behavior. If you're injured in an accident or at work or something like that, how can we determine the best course of treatment to help minimize the days that you're hospitalized or away from work and get you better sooner? So a lot of information around medical data, drug usage, things like that, and how we can find the best possible care for our injured employees and things like that. The last thing I'd mention is the use of drones. As an insurance company, we use drones quite a bit when we think about property losses and also property appraisals. So as we've expanded and worked a lot with the FAA to develop our drone usage and what's allowable and not allowable, taking those images in that we use the drones for and helping them to improve our rating, improve our knowledge of the customer, and also assess the claims, in particular in times when we can't access the property due to flooding or fire and things like that.
Eric, do you want to jump in with some of the AI?
Yeah, 3 quick ones. Customer lifetime value. How can we process that data? We have models today, but it takes 6 to 9 months to figure it out. How can I figure it out in a month, in a week? Right? How can I process more data? So that's a great one. Outfit optimization. There's a really interesting technology with AI around image processing, and we seed the process, and then how does it go from there? And then the third one is, and I've talked at this conference before about digital attribution, but not just attribution, incrementality. Right? Attribution is just, hey, I think this did it. Now we know what's actually moving the needle.
And Eric, just so the audience has a sense, are you in market in all of those things right now? So they're future and hot and novel, but they're actually starting to be tested and used?
Yes, we are. So.
Mohammed, you want to share? We talked a little bit about even a couple bigger concepts that may be still too futuristic.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, where I'm seeing, so for us as Ameriprise, I think some of the interesting stuff, I think for financial services is personality insights. What can you identify about a person, what would make them more likely, in fact, to make poor financial decisions and help them? And so, you know, you've probably seen the 5 big personality types. Can we actually understand that? And so that would require putting data sets together that probably haven't been put together before. So that's some of the more innovative stuff we're thinking about. We do recognize that that's probably further out, so we're not putting a lot of resources against that today. The other things we've been thinking about is, you know, what about deep learning and all those capabilities? In reality, I think most of the work we do is with advisors, and we have to get them to believe what we're doing. And so it's a bit black box for us just yet, but it's an area we're going to explore a bit further. And for a lot of our use cases, deep learning, I think we found, is probably not the best answer. We don't do a lot of image analytics. We don't do a lot of text-based analytics, right, et cetera. So at some point, it may make sense, but it's probably not there yet. But the area that I guess I'm most excited about right now is sort of the automated analytics. And what I mean about this is that there are tools out there that automate feature engineering, that sort of do what's called a greedy approach to feature engineering, basically taking different data sets you have and creating tens of thousands of features and doing it in an automated way so that you can, you know, test tons of variables without actually having to spend some time doing that. And then the other is automated modeling, where you're taking some of the best data scientists who are creating common workflows that they've used for certain types of problems, and you're building packages, and you're enabling your data to go through those packages so your data scientists can, you know, do some feature engineering, try some different models, tweak data here and there, and then basically just it improves their productivity, improves time to high accuracy on your models. So those are some of the areas that I guess I'd say we're kind of exploring today.
Before we turn it over to some questions, let's just tackle a little bit about speed and agility. And we've all talked about it from some of our different applications, but I'm wondering if any of you could share examples of some deployed real-time analytics and sort of where it's showing up for you and where you're still being confronted with obstacles, where you'd like to have faster analytics. Eric, you want to share a couple from our world?
I'm trying to think. We're not exactly at real time. So I mentioned the outfit builder. That's one real time. That's in pilot and evolving right now. We're doing product recommendations. We just stood up a website. We're still optimizing that. We're honestly 1 year in, and we're delighted the site is stable now. Now we're going to get into automating and strengthening some of the product recommendation capabilities.
So I'm going to throw out as an example that one of the big complexities, right, is there's all this talk in retail about seeing the customer as a customer no matter where you're interacting with them. And for the most part, big retailers, even specialty apparel in the $1 billion plus, is starting to be able to do that, but almost never in real time. So meanwhile, you have, in this instance, 2,000 doors out there times 7 associates in each, so 7,000 employees doing interactions every day, and we don't know that customer in real time. Huge link opportunity as sort of a real-time problem.
You know, one question on that, though, is do you have to know in real time? I guess part of it is, could you, for example, create a weekly snapshot? If a customer walks in, you can look at what they look like last week, and that's probably going to be close to what they look like today.
Right.
Is that good enough?
Oh, that's very fair.
Yeah.
Very fair.
And we probably should say that the challenge in the moment is actually you don't even know if they're a web customer as well as stores.
Yeah.
So, yes, there should be lots of steps on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Real time's a generous term. But a good example of bringing to bear the data, you have a lot of that data now, right?
Right. Maybe the best way to qualify it is real-time access to week-old data would be
there
great.
You go.
It'd be a victory.
Yeah. I think we're kind of in a similar spot there, too, is for advisors to value the insights we give them, they sort of have to be updated at least daily.
Right.
And if they're stale, they'll think everything is stale. And so part of that is we're working on building the infrastructure to do that.
All right, thanks so much, you guys. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.